Spoiler-free thoughts, though, this will be pretty short, but I thought it was okay. I didn't really like the film all that much, but I did think there was definitely a great movie in here. I just think that the movie was too silly. And that's kind of, I guess, my biggest problem with it is it didn't take itself seriously enough. And look, I know I've made complaints in the past where, like I've said, movies, take itself too seriously and it just comes off as bland and melodramatic. And that is the case sometimes with films. But I feel like this film kind of suffered from the opposite of, like, it just gets too silly. And all the none of the jokes land. I don't think there was a single funny joke in this whole film, in my opinion. I mean, that's subjective, but I'm just telling you what I feel. There wasn't really a good joke in this whole movie to me. Some of the action sequences I think are pretty well done. But again, I just think that the whole awe and lore behind this whole story, I feel like could have really used a little bit more fleshing out and explain. Not necessarily even explaining, but just kind of, I wish it was a little bit more immersive. It feels like a movie. This does. And I guess, like, I know that's kind of like a cheap way to complain about it, but, like, it does. It's, it just feels like everything is moving towards a specific place. It doesn't feel authentic, and it doesn't have, like, the weight that I think it could have had, emotionally speaking, because it's just, like, a lot of the times, like, the characters, they just, like, the movie tonally is off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's times where these characters make jokes in scenes that are tense, or, like, characters will be arguing and then, like, 30 seconds later they're joking, and then they're back to arguing, and then they're back to joking, and it's like, okay, like, it's like, be consistent. And, like, I'm fine with little jokes and a little levity, and you couldn't help but, since I couldn't necessarily compare this to the actual games itself, since I haven't played them, I tried to compare it almost to, like, Indiana Jones, Goonies, like, these kind of treasure hunt kind of films. And, like, those movies just have, like, great iconic visuals to complement the puzzles that the characters are solving, and the places they go, and the different trap doors and things they unlock. Everything just feels so grandiose, and in this film it just doesn't. It comes off really flat. I mean, like, a lot of, like, the and I'm not going to spoil it, obviously, but, like, a lot of the treasure hunt sequences where they're trying to figure out parts of the puzzle and how to get to the next stage and all of that, which I guess kind of plays into why I think this feels more like a movie, is that there just isn't that magic that, Indiana Jones films had, and the Goonies had, and other films like that have. Treasure Island from the 70s. Like, those films have that sense of magic to them that this just really needed, in my opinion. But without getting into too many spoilers, the villain, who is played by Antonio Banderas, he's interesting. Again, I just wish there was a little bit more there. And also, the other villain played by, what's her name? Tati Gabrielle Braddock. Yeah. Wish there was a little bit more with her too. And I'll explain it a little bit when I get into spoilers. But I wish that those two characters just had a little bit more depth, but at least they gave them some screen time. Like, they definitely get screen time. It's just, like, they don't really use it to their advantage, and the reason I say that is because, like, a lot of films, they don't take the time to give their villains the screen time. Like, this easily could have been one of those films where they just kind of throw you in and then you don't really care about the villains. I found myself actually halfway interested in the villains, which, is better than nothing, I suppose. But again, I guess my final spoiler-free thoughts, and then I'll get into the spoiler review. I wasn't too blown away with this. I thought it was okay. A little bit less than okay, honestly. I would say it's a little subpar. And I think it's just because it lacks a lot of the magic, I think, that, these treasure hunt kind of films need. And I guess that's kind of a hard thing to kind of pinpoint on how they could correct it. But I think just visually making these caves and trap doors and things that they open with to help find the treasure. I just wish it had more, you know, I guess I'm trying not to spoil it, you know, but I wish it had more, you know, grandiose to it, visually speaking. A lot of these sets are just kind of bland, you know, and they cheap out with jokes that just don't work. And I'll obviously explain it more when I spoil the movie, but yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say. My hands are kind of tied. That's why I don't like doing like full on spoiler free reviews, just because you don't really get to actually explain what you did and didn't like about it. So, I mean, I guess I'll just say, basically, should you see it? I don't know. This probably is one you could skip. Wait till it comes out on VOD. Because honestly, like, I saw it in the theater, and I mean, it was pretty, you know, I think it's a pretty movie at times, but it lacks that mise en scène, that you know, Indiana Jones and Goonies, and I know I keep bringing those movies up, but like, that's the gold standard for this type of film, you know, or maybe even the Uncharted games had in some regard. I just wish it had more, you know, but I like more grandiose to it in terms of the presentation. But again, I like the story, actually. I think the story is actually kind of interesting. You know, the whole connection to Ferdinand Magellan and all of that. I think that's really interesting, and I'll talk more about that. But yeah, I think there is a great film in here, but what we got was kind of a mediocre film, if I'm being completely honest. Wasn't that impressed with it. But that's my spoiler. That's my spoiler-free thoughts on Uncharted.